Welcome to Senior Moments. I'm Vickie Carraher, the Senior Service Coordinator for the City of Kettering, and today I have an amazing guest. Aaron from the Dayton Mediation Center is here with us. COVID has been going on now for, it seems like 20 years. It's been, what, 2.5?
Right.
It seems like it's going to go on and on and on. And that really kind of makes people grumpy, and it makes people get into conflict probably a little more than they would have when they weren't stressed out about that. We have a problem with people losing their jobs and losing their places to live, all kinds of different things. So I'm excited you are here to help me understand what everything is going on at the Mediation Center. So tell me a little bit about why the Mediation Center was made, and give us a little history.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you, Vickie, for having me here today. The Mediation Center initially started in 1987 when some individuals from Dayton went out to California, and they heard about mediation. The fact that there's a conflict management existed, community mediation, generally speaking, and they said, you know what, it would be really great to have that in the city of Dayton. It's interesting that our mediation center is connected to the city of Dayton in a way that in many places in the United States there aren't mediation centers that are part of a city. But that's the way it is here in the city of Dayton, where this is yet just another piece of innovation that seems like the city of Dayton has and that many people don't know about. And so it began in 1987. It's a collaboration between the city and Wright State University. And so that's how we began.
So when you talk about Dayton, are there services available to beyond Dayton?
Oh, absolutely. So we have linkages to the court system, like the Montgomery County Juvenile Court, and so we serve everybody within the county in that particular way.
Okay.
So for that, and then also with the programming that I belong to, the program manager for the homelessness prevention, landlord-tenant programming, and so that serves the entire county as well.
A lot of people, when they think of mediation, they think of union versus the administration of a business. Mediation, a lot of people don't see it until they get into the court system. They may be recommended for mediation, but there are ways to start mediation before it ends up in court. So tell me a little bit about what mediation means, because a lot of people may not be able to understand, well, what is mediation anyway?
Right, this is a great question. I hear this all the time about this association between mediation and the court system, but this isn't necessarily what it's all about. Certainly mediation occurs within the court system in several areas, but with us at the Mediation Center at the City of Dayton, we think about mediation as something that certainly should and best practice would happen far before court, so that court proceedings, if it were part of the transaction or possibly, that it wouldn't occur. And so we think about conflict as being a crisis in human interaction. And so whenever this crisis occurs, then things become difficult for people. And when that happens, then we're talking about there could be these misunderstandings or these arguments that occur between individuals. And so as a community mediation center, people are able to come to us far before the court system. Whenever it is that they feel there's a conflict that exists and they'd like a neutral third party to support them in having a conversation, then they can refer themselves or others to the Mediation Center.
I think it's really, when you talk about it that way, it seems like it would be something that would totally help in the beginning of conflict. We know some conflict turns into violence, some conflict turns into property damage, and I think we get down that road and people just progress into being more upset, and then it just blows apart. But if we get mediation in the beginning, it seems like that what you're saying is that's a preventative situation.
It definitely is. I think one of the keys to mediation is to recognize the state of conflict that you're in that particular situation. Oftentimes, conflict makes it so that we're isolated in the situation we're in. We talk about weakness and self-absorption in our world. where you're weak, you're just not at your best because of the circumstances. You're thrown off. You have a lack of understanding about why it is that this occurrence is happening. And we also talk about self-absorption because in the midst of conflict, you're thinking about yourself. In that particular way, when these two things come together, oftentimes we're not interested in talking to other people and hugging and coming together and
no kumbaya
that's
moments.
right, in big groups and dancing in circles, our arms interlocked. No, okay, that's not the case. Oftentimes it's very isolating. We're thinking thoughts about whatever the situation is, whatever the person is that aren't so great, and while they're talking to us or making those statements, we can't hear them anyway. And so those are the difficult parts, or what makes conflict so difficult. And so oftentimes people don't think about, oh, if I had a neutral third party that could support me in this place, maybe there could be some discourse, but no one thinks about that because they're only thinking about themselves. They're only thinking about how much they're hurt. They're only thinking about their own perspective. But on the other side of the conflict, there's an opportunity to get more strong and responsive, where you can actually hear people differently. You can gain more strength about yourself to hear what's going on in the conflict, to understand what's happening really, versus on the flip side, just having ill will or misgivings about the situation. You're really able to find a better space of thinking about it. Someone was talking yesterday, because we talk about this all the time at the Mediation Center, go figure, was talking about the fact that conflict just really, not only does it cloud your mind, it just takes up a lot of space. And it takes up a lot of space where it really just drives out a lot of the great thoughts that a person could have regularly.
And as a nurse, I can say that kind of conflict brings on physical ill health.
Absolutely.
High blood pressure, all kinds of different negative effects physically, because your adrenaline is always going and you're always in that fight or flight, and so your body just gets used to this wired place, and then you find yourself ill. So I think that's such a good thing that you guys are talking to people about that. So if I am somebody who wants mediation, how do we get to you? And each party has to agree to the mediation, correct?
That's correct. So our services are totally voluntary. And so, at any point in the conversation, if people agree, well, first off, we talk to them. And if they make an agreement to come to the table, then we let them know this is a totally voluntary conversation. I did say that right, correct? So at any point, if the conversation is not working for them, then certainly they can let us know. And if at any point, they're here, if this was our mediation we're having now, at any point, if they need to leave or wanted to leave, that they could do that. And so it's definitely, we don't set it up as if you have to talk about certain things, because then things could get difficult for people in a way where there could possibly be violence.
Some people may not be emotionally ready to go there.
Well, that's right. And so, the question always comes up with our volunteers about, has there ever been any fights? Do people ever, get to fisticuffs?
I was wondering that myself.
Yes. And so the answer is no, this has not happened.
Good.
And the reason is because it's a voluntary conversation that people can have, and we make this very clear that if at any point, they need some support, please let us know. And if at any point they feel as if they no longer like to have the conversation, then certainly the door is here and you can exit. And people take that opportunity all the time when things get difficult for them.
It seems like do you have rules there when you begin? Do you educate people about, okay, this is the rule of how we're going to have these conversations?
Yes, that's a great question. As a transformative mediation center, we are individual-based or client-based. So when I say that, the focus is about them. So we don't so much make rules. There are certainly guidelines, about how mediation can go. It's their conversation, though. Oftentimes in other places where they're looking to get to where they believe there's some ends that they need to get to, we believe that the conversation is about the people, whatever it is that they want to discuss. In my programming, things may very well be in court and they're talking about how a person moves or stays in a property. But there's oftentimes in mediation you find there's so many different other things that need to be spoken about first. Before you even get to this point where you talk about whatever the issue is. We allow people to talk about those things. We often talk about that we follow the heat of a conversation, the things that are difficult. We really go there, support those with a series of interventions we use, like summaries, check-ins, reflections, which, we paraphrase what people say, because oftentimes in the midst of conflict, people don't hear themselves.
Yeah.
And so when I say, well, Vickie, you said this, and you're like, oh, okay, I did say that. Because oftentimes we have things that go through our mind, but, once someone else says it.
I have a disconnection from my brain to my mouth sometimes. Sometimes they're not working together.
Well, Vickie, you're not the only one. And so, as a community mediation center and transformative mediation center, we allow for people to be the focus, not us. So that allows for people to talk about things in the way that they need to, and then it feels that there's not so much pressure. We don't pressure people to go to certain ways. We allow that conversation to flow the way that they'd like it to.
So this can be an ongoing process, not a one and done?
Well, it could be, but oftentimes it is one time.
Okay, good. That's awesome. So when I was looking at your, you sent me information so that I could look into the system. You had a wonderful story about two kids who had conflict at school and ended up at mediation. Tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, you're not going to tell any names or anything like that, but that to me sounded so good, because in the end, there was such a, people understood each other so much better.
Right. In that particular conflict, I believe it was that the young people, that they were, once again, fisticuffs. They were, there might have been some physical interactions between these individuals. But once they were able to, to come together, they were able to talk through these things, realize that oftentimes is the case, it wasn't just those two individuals were the center point. There were surrounding circumstances and individuals which contributed to that particular situation.
Yeah, they were talking about it happened at school, and the parents became involved in the mediation, which and they ended up having that support of each other, which I found was really interesting. Going into mediation, it was two families at war kind of thing, because these two kids couldn't get along. But at the end, I don't know that the kids became great friends, but it sounded like the parents were able to talk and kind of come together in a solution.
It's a really fascinating thing about mediation in that particular way that oftentimes people don't realize. That at the beginning, that there's this definite, or sometimes, or enough times, this animosity or this wall that's built between people. But when they come together and they're able to talk, they're able to oftentimes get new information. They're able to make shifts, as we talk about it. That's fancy mediator talk, about being able to make movements in a way where they're able to be more strong and responsive instead of weak and self-absorbed. And when this happens, you get new information perhaps, a person apologizes, you find out that the person is thinking in a certain way that you can also empathize with. You're able to see a person in a more connective way. You're able to connect more with them, see them in a way that's more humanizing, where certainly initially we think about people in a way that's not so great. We demonize them. They're the worst person ever, that they would never understand. And then you end up talking to a person, you're like, they're a human being just like me.
I think that it's great because we have a lot of times, Dayton is becoming a multicultural center. We have, immigrants from this place or from that place. And sometimes we don't stop and look at, this is their culture, and we may not think it's one way. And I've had, people who have had, set ideas of how somebody would be. But then when they come together and they realize, oh yeah, you have kids, you work, you grocery shop, you clean your house, you do everything I do. But when we're just in that face, until we get to know that person, they're just somebody from a different culture or anything like that. So how does somebody get to come to the Mediation Center? Do you have to be referred by somebody? How does that work?
So the great thing about being a community mediation center means that you can self-refer.
Okay.
So that, if you're having an issue or anyone in the community was having an issue with someone, they could give me a call, and they'd be able to say, I'd like to have a mediation with whomever. Since we are the city of Dayton, all the people that give us a call in those particular ways, it's free to everyone who lives, works, goes to school within the city of Dayton.
That's a good point. That's one of the first things people ask me about any service. How much is this going to cost me?
That's right. So free service. And so in that particular way, and there probably should be an asterisk over here, everyone. But that all being said, people can give us a call, and depending on whatever the situation is, then they talk to the proper case manager. For example, if they were talking about community issues, neighbor issues, then they would talk to Cheryl Alderman about those things. If they happen to be talking about visitation, those kinds of things, then they talk to Tricia Wirtz. If they happen to be talking about landlord-tenant homelessness prevention, then they would give me a call. And so we've got several programs where they would give those individuals a call. We'd look to find out if the other party is interested in mediating. And if so, then we bring everybody together downtown at our office, which is located at 371 West 2nd Street.
So 371 West 2nd, you said? Give them the number, and we'll have that number on the screen as well, but go ahead and give us the number.
Yeah, the number is 937-333-2345.
And so when they call that, what hours is that phone being manned?
So that number is 8 to 5. Someone's going to be there.
Okay.
But certainly leaving a message is a phenomenal thing, and we'll definitely get to that as soon as we can.
The interesting thing I found from the research that you sent me was that you have volunteers who do mediation. So tell us a little bit about who might be interested in volunteering and what their role would be. Right.
Certainly anyone who has a heart of service, those individuals could very well be interested in what we do in becoming a volunteer. One of the great things about mediation, especially the way we do it as transformative mediators, is it is something that can not only apply to utilizing with other people, but then also it's something you can utilize in your own life on a daily basis. And so whoever has a heart to serve, those individuals will be great to come to the Mediation Center.
And so you provide the training?
We do. So it so happens, and let me make sure I've got these stats together, but I believe it's 24 hours of training that we have in person, and then 16 hours of what we would call on-the-job training, where you get to observe mediations, and then you actually get to get more involved in a stepwise fashion in the mediation before we turn you loose. But I use that word lightly because we're always there, and it's always an evolution, the learning curve for mediation.
So there's always a staff person that they can go to and go, okay, this went in our mediation, and I'm not sure what to do with that. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity. I know in my own life there are some people that you just automatically, when you're with them, you may meet them for the first time, and you just end up talking with that rapport, and that person puts you at ease. And I think there are those kinds of individuals. I used Lyft this morning, and my Lyft driver was he asked me about my job, and we had this conversation. He got me to my destination, and it was like, wow, it was nice talking. So I think there are those people out there. And I love the fact that you're providing the training, you're helping. And it does help in all areas of your life. Not that, we expect people to be in constant conflict, but here recently we've had a lot of conflict. There's a lot of scary things in the news and things that go bump in the night, and so I know that is very important. There are some other programs that you're involved in that are awesome as well. Tell us a little bit about those programs.
Right. So, there are several things that we offer, several different types of programs we offer at the Mediation Center. So one, of course, is our juvenile court juvenile diversion programming, which goes through the Montgomery County Juvenile Court, where young people, when they're involved in some circumstances, some misdemeanor circumstances, for the first time, they're able to be sent through diversionary pathways to the Mediation Center. And so themselves and their parents and whomever else was involved in the situation were able to talk about whatever the situation was. And if they're able to get some clarity about that in a way that works for both parties, we're able to get that down in agreement, and then it goes back over to the court, and that may very well be the end of the circumstances.
I think that's a wonderful thing, because then this youth who may have just committed we don't always have the best, even when teenagers don't always have the best judgment, it keeps them from having, these records that would follow them throughout their lives. And I think that's awesome that we can provide that service to youth.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of other stuff going on too, huh?
Right, right. So we also have a police referral program where the police or the sheriff's office can refer cases that don't rise to the level of them taking someone to jail or them writing a ticket. But still there's conflict there. You know, there was still a call for them to come out. So those are things that they have the ability to refer to us as well. And so we then call the parties that were involved to see if they'd be interested in mediation, if they would be interested in talking about those circumstances.
So that's a good idea. I do, when I'm working with the police, find that sometimes their neighbors, a lot of the calls we get is one neighbor goes after another neighbor, and there's this major animosity, and the police are like, listen, if you guys can't resolve this and it keeps escalating, you're giving us no choice. So I think that's a good option to be able to do mediation before it gets so bad that there is criminal issues.
Right, right. Neighbor issues are interesting.
Yeah, they are.
Because as we talked about earlier, you know, conflict is not something that people are quick to address for the most part. And so there are times where we get to the conflict a little bit down the road, and it can be, people can, it can take some work and some effort on their part and ours, support them in moving past the stuck place that they may be in. Also at the juvenile court we have visitation mediation. So unmarried parents, when they want to talk about custody or they want to talk about custody/parenting time, then they can come to the Mediation Center and have that conversation as well.
That can be very heated.
Oh, and they are. Trisha Wirtz is the program manager for that, and she is one of the more seasoned individuals, long tenured individuals at the Mediation Center, and she does a phenomenal job with those, and those mediations may be the most, perhaps robust conversations that are had.
Yeah, having been through conflict like that with family members, I know how, when there's a divorce and there are kids involved, everybody, it's a high stakes game for some people.
Right, right. And like many conversations, those are ones that are great for us at the Mediation Center because oftentimes there are several things, many other factors that are involved in these people's lives which are causing this issue with knowing who should have the child when and why. But when they're able to work through those items, then they can figure out, okay, well, maybe we don't have to go to the police station in order to transfer the child. Maybe we can do it at grandma's house instead of whatever. And so those are amazing situations. Other programming that we have, of course, is the Landlord-Tenant Homelessness Prevention Programming that I have.
That is getting a lot of need for that, and a lot of funding has come down from the federal government to help with that.
That's right.
Walk us through what that's about.
So this programming has been going on for many years, way before I started 7.5 years ago. But I've been on that particular task for the last 7 or so years, and in the past 6 months we were able to get funding from the county, Montgomery County, and also the city, which allowed for us to expand our programming throughout the county as well. And so that's been a phenomenal thing. We've always had postcards that went out through Dayton Municipal Court to let whoever was involved in an eviction case, to let them know that they could give us a call to see how we could support them. And so we were able to expand the distribution of those cards through other court systems like Kettering Municipal Court, Vandalia Municipal Court, the Montgomery County Municipal Courts, Montgomery County Common Pleas Court. This is brand new, and phenomenal, and a great thing for this to happen because it allows us to impact more people than we were before. And so being a mediation center, the first item that we want to make sure that people are able to that's available to them is mediation, the opportunity for mediation. There are enough times where that is not necessarily on the table as much because of circumstances. Perhaps there are attorneys involved, they're not interested in mediation, but there's still an opportunity to be supported through the various resources that Montgomery County has and you're very aware of. And so we can definitely refer people to rental assistance. Many people still, Vickie, don't recognize that rental assistance is available in the way that it is now.
That is phenomenal to me because there are funds out there that are providing, if somebody's gone through an eviction or they're headed toward eviction and the funds help pay that back rent. A lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic, and the evictions kind of stopped for a while, but then as soon as they lifted that moratorium on it, it's like the cases started rolling back in. Tell us a little bit more about so does somebody have to be in an eviction to get those services? Can they do it prior to eviction?
So certainly we would like for an individual to apply for that assistance as soon as possible. And so in that particular way, whenever a resident recognizes, oh, you know what, I might be in a tough spot, that's a time to apply. Now with us at the Mediation Center, our referral process is once there has been something going on in the court system, then as far as an actual case, then I'm able to refer people to the various entities that exist, whether it's Miami Valley Community Action Partnership or through to the 211 helpline. I can make those referrals to those individuals for that assistance at that point.
That is so important because losing your housing is such a scary thing to just be, where am I going to go? Particularly for people who really don't have relatives that live around here. I know that impacts the homeless shelter, that impacts, people living in their cars and living on the street. So how do I apply for that assistance?
So that's a great question. So with the Miami Valley Community Action Partnership, the application process, from what I've seen, is most expedient when it's done online. So you would go to the Miami Valley Community Action Partnership's website, which happens to be Miami Valley CAP.org, and you would go there, and then you would go to the COVID relief button, and then you would go to the Apply Here tab to apply for the rental assistance. And for the 211 help link, which is through the county, you would literally call 211. Now there's a caveat to that. As of today, this is a viable way of looking at rental assistance, but this may not be that particular way by the end of the month.
Okay.
Maybe all calls by the end of March, beginning of April, maybe all calls or all referrals or interest in rental assistance should go to the Miami Valley Community Action Partnership.
Okay. So you can provide funds if someone's evicted. Can you help them get new housing? Are there resources for that?
So that's a great question. So we're literally the city of Dayton, the Mediation Center. So we don't have funds or housing, but I can refer people to where the funds are, to places for housing considerations that are in our community resource
The city
list.
of Kettering actually has some funding for that as well.
And you all do an amazing job with that. Also, the Stay Put program, which is underneath the city of Kettering. Andrea Perkins, amazing job.
She was here a couple months ago telling people about that. So, there's just so much, and we are running out of time. I hate to say, I hate to cut you off.
Oh, we got only
Before we leave, give us that phone number again and the address.
So the phone number for the Dayton Mediation Center is 937-333-2345. And my number, Aaron Prim, my number is 937-333-2349. Our address, 371 West 2nd Street, Dayton, Ohio, 45402. We're located directly across the street from the juvenile court and right next to the sheriff's office.
Thank you. So much going on. If you didn't get all that, or if you want to talk about other services available to seniors in the Kettering area, please call me at 937-296-3356 or come to the Kettering Connection at Town & Country Shopping Center Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8:30 to 12:30. Thank you and have a great day.